on January 17th. Okay. I don't know, do we have to do a roll call?
Yeah, I think we should.
Yep. Oh, no, because Will's not here. We don't need to do, you're present. You don't need to do roll call.
As long as nobody's zooming in to
Yeah.
participate,
Right.
we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, Will's not doing.
So by the agenda, and Amy, I'm gonna look for your help from you on this,
Okay.
since you know the context, other additional discussion is that.
Yeah, other just, can I see the agenda? really
Sure.
quickly? Sorry, I should have printed too.
I actually have it on my phone, so.
I want to add, tracking interest in the RFI, like tracking data behind it, and then making decisions based on the data in terms of like advertising.
Advertising track.
Okay. So how would you suggest we go about that?
Maybe,
That would be, could just add it down to the end.
yeah,
So under,
Oh, okay, I got the actual
Okay,
tracking,
yeah,
so you want to add it to the agenda. Okay.
so that, yeah.
tracking data.
Okay,
All right.
so done. Okay, next thing, approval of the minutes from January 3rd.
I have one correction on that one.
January 3rd?
I believe so. That was the one I missed. Is that correct?
Yep.
So it said in that I had estimates for repairs that I didn't bring because I wasn't present. But I didn't have estimates and I didn't ask for them. I did go to Ryan and ask him to forward me any estimates he got when the original thing happened, but there weren't any. They just gave us the asbestos that they cost.
I think that was what they were referencing, was the previous one that you had mentioned,
Okay.
not that.
Okay.
We were
You
still
were-
waiting for more, but I
Oh,
think
okay.
that was referenced that only that one
Okay,
previous.
so that was the only, that was just,
Yeah.
as long as it's in there, that was the only.
Yep.
The only price I got.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think in,
Back in December.
yeah, so in December, in our meeting minutes, that we had $35,000 to remediate the
Yeah.
lead,
Yep.
and that,
No, I think that was for asbestos. I don't think we've ever gotten a price for remediating lead. Or if we have, I haven't seen
That's
it.
the first I've heard of lead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was it mold too?
No.
No.
I mean, that's
No,
not.
we thought that might be an issue.
Asbestos.
Asbestos.
okay, and then it says asbestos mitigation if needed, and we have a figure of $35,000.
Okay, so as far as I know, the only quote we've ever gotten from anybody is 35,000 for asbestos.
Okay, so that just might have been a ballpark number that maybe someone.
Yeah, perhaps, but
Okay. We have a responsibility to test for lead in the house if we sell the house.
If we sell that house,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I moved
Right?
it, yep, I moved that we accept the.
I'm actually gonna ask.
I still have some requested
Oh, you
changes.
do? Okay.
Yeah.
When we get to the lead part, we do have some experts in the audience.
Ah,
We'll ask.
okay, great.
Okay.
So, I would just request that we, remove some of the editorial language. Under building repairs, there's a statement that certain members are dismayed. That was not voted on or moved or.
It was discussed. I'm happy to leave it in. It was
So I
discussed.
think it's fair to change the adjective. Or remove. Say it was discussed.
I agree with that. I think we should not have editorial in there.
And then for the same reason, I would move that we change,
So getting back to dismayed, you can change the word to disappointed, but editorial should say.
It's still editorial if you say
It's still
disappointed. I
editorial.
think you just want to say it was discussed.
so.
I disagree.
I think the purpose of this was just for general public watching and all that this is not the first time we've discussed it, and it just felt like nothing was going forward. So we wanted to be on record as showing
Sure.
that we're dismayed that nothing has progressed.
Yeah, I'm not disputing the sincerity of the belief or whether it's appropriate or not, but it's not appropriate in minutes. Minutes are a recording of actions
I
taken.
agree.
in
We
meeting.
can make those statements, but the minutes.
So what would you suggest we write?
I
there?
would suggest, you know, it was noted that this was not the first time we had discussed this issue and that no action has been taken.
Right.
For the same reason, need a call to action ASAP.
Hang on one second.
I agree with that, that's strike.
Okay. I'm sorry, how did you want it on the, dismayed that nothing was progressed, just it was discussed and no further action was
Or
taken?
this isn't the first, the board noted this isn't the first time this has been discussed, but no action has been taken.
So factual statements versus opinion.
So then are you gonna take out the people that called in on Zoom, their comments? Because those are not facts, those are statements? So
I would
when we
say
have
it's
people-
different for the board versus members of the public.
If someone says, I am disappointed, that's a matter of record.
What was the second one? ASAP.
Yeah, I need a call to action ASAP. And then just a question, there's, under the statement regarding Wendy Isaac's call. The last sentence is regarding Don McIver. Do we want to put that, do we want to separate that out into a separate bullet point? Just for clarity? That's all I have.
Any other changes? So I'll entertain a motion to approve with the changes noted.
One second.
Or you're making the motion to?
No, I can't. I was entertaining one. So you make it,
I'll
you
make a
second it.
motion to approve as amended.
I second
All in favor?
it.
Okay, let's move now to the minutes of January 10th. Any changes or concerns?
Put the date on the top, January 10th, 2025.
Yep.
First one, under new business, the group reviewed the advertisement to be submitted to Edible Boston and approved it. We approved the digital ad.
Okay, thank you.
And then down the bottom, the RFI, when we talk about the email addresses, Brad will be notified at the next meeting. The RFI will be linked to the working group's webpage on the Littleton Town website. So I was asked that in his absence, I would be the second recipient.
Okay, thanks. I'll put that in.
So to clarify, since I wasn't in that meeting, what am I receiving? Or are we receiving?
So when
Thanks.
someone emails the orchard_response email account, those emails will be forwarded to both you and I.
Okay,
So if people have questions, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take it, I'm
Okay.
gonna add it to FAQs, and then when responses come in, we'll have it captured in that email address, but then you and I can just monitor to see.
okay,
Like,
works.
maybe no one submits one, maybe 100 people submit, but that's good information to have.
okay.
So the question is, which email do you want used?
The bcrajmitch@gmail.com.
Okay.
Any other notations or changes? Barring that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of January 10th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'll abstain as I wasn't present. So. Okay, Okay, for updates, advertising of the RFI, where's it been posted to date and the number of current complete submissions to date?
So Jen and I can start. So no one has submitted an RFI as of yet. And to date, it has gone out in the Edible Boston newsletter. It has gone out to eMass Craft. It is going out very soon. I'm just waiting for them to approve it to New England Farm Finder. NOFA has agreed to post it because the land's been fallow for long enough. There's been no chemical spread, so they agreed that they would post it. But we need to talk about the fee for that here. And you and I connected with the state today with Richard LeBlanc. Pat, I can't remember.
Pat Cricksonitis.
Yeah, who sold the chemicals to.
Yeah. To Charles.
To Charles.
So we've been in contact. I sent him a copy of the RFI and we were supposed to talk tonight. I haven't heard back from him yet, but he will distro it out to other folks as well in that
Yeah.
network.
What is his name?
I'll spell it for you.
Okay.
I have to look it up.
I have it right here. It's KRIKSCEONAITIS.
And who is he?
So he is somebody I met way back in the beginning. He used to sell all the IPM products to Charles Auger
Okay,
for years, and then he stopped selling.
Do you know what
Charles.
year he stopped selling the chemicals?
I'm sure he could tell me that.
Okay, could we ask him?
Yep.
Please?
And you got in touch with him just to have him distribute the information to his server?
Well, we've been chatting all along,
Mhm.
because he ran a Brooksby farm up in Peabody or Danvers. So he was very helpful with giving us information in the very beginning of this process. So it was probably January, February of 22 that we chatted with him. He never came into a meeting. I just did a lot of talking with him, a lot of note taking, things we should look for. He came in toward the orchard a couple of times on his own and said, there's things that can probably be saved, things that can't be saved, but no, he was a wealth of information. So I can get specifics too.
The NOFA posting, is that going to be just a classify or an email or?
Yeah, they have it classified, so we can put it there. We can get to it when we get further down the, agenda,
Okay.
just their cost.
Is eMass Craft, and is that the same?
No, that's different. That's run out of, the Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition. It's just like a listserv that goes out to,
Okay,
it's Craft Young Farmers or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
like beginning young farmers.
and it hasn't gone out or it will soon?
Yeah, it has gone. out.
Okay. So the Farm Finder and NOFA have not yet, but the other three have. The other two, so the Edible Boston and eMass Craft have gone out.
Yeah, and there's, yeah, and I've been tracking it in this spreadsheet, which I can share with you as well. I've also tried to reach out to some winery, sort of land advertising sort of places. They haven't really gotten back to me. They advertise for land that's already in grapes, so it's trying to weed myself in, but we'll see about that.
Will's on the board at Farm Bureau. He might be able to get you free, but it's cheap. It's like $18.
Yeah, Farm Bureau, we can get to that. I know I don't want to skip too far ahead. It's $25 for the first 20 words, an additional $1 for every other word. So based on the flyer I've done, it's like $80. So,
Check their publication date to make sure because they cut back.
okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I appreciate it. So, yeah, I mean, it's had a wide reach. It's reached a lot of farmers in Massachusetts. It's gone out to Edible Boston. It's gonna land the New England Farm Finder will have it up very soon. And one of the things I wanted to do was to start tracking who specifically is asking us questions, just to give get a better understanding of a level of interest. We've had people contact us so far with questions, and I know it doesn't capture the full picture, but just to have an understanding of who's reaching out to us with interest. So far we've had 10 interested parties, that I'm aware of that's showing interest. But if we can track that, then I think that will help us figure out if we need to do more of a push with advertising.
And
A lot of it's word
we
of
mentioned
mouth,
at the
too.
last meeting that this, we were gonna discuss tonight, when we were gonna send something out to the townspeople as well.
I thought we said a week after.
We did.
the
That would
RFI.
be, we would confirm that tonight
Right.
to go ahead and go.
And what do we mean by send to the towns? Are we thinking like
Yeah,
a
email,
flash alert?
an email blast from from the town website and town email list.
I get email blast is fine, I wouldn't mail anything. No,
Right, no, electronic only, not.
yeah, no, that's weird.
Yeah, and so I don't know if people would be willing to share with me the names or the organizations that they've sort of passed this on word of mouth, and if they don't wanna like tell me the name for privacy, you just say private connection, we'll just like list it just so we can kind of count it.
Right.
So the Mass Fruit Growers Association, I can get you some names there. I don't know if they're gonna publish it, but it's a word of mouth thing.
Yeah,
And the Vegetable and Berry Growers Association.
yeah, no one's put their name against that to
Chris
track.
Grant is their secretary. I'll get you his email.
Okay,
I reached out to Quiet Storm because they have expressed interest and let her know that the RFI was available. And she responded with just a thank you.
yeah, they're already on the list of people. So that, yeah, so,
So I reached out and Amy sent them the RFI to World Farmers and they're interested as well.
yeah, they're already on the list.
They'd be a good tenant for that one.
And then Janine Wood asked us about the
Ugandan.
Ugandans, yeah.
They have the RFI now, or I passed it, I
The Ugandans who ran the place up next to
in
Donald.
Boston.
I think that, no, from my conversations with her, that's not necessarily the same group.
Okay,
It's just that she's very much in touch with the immigrants, locally.
so who is this?
Janine Wood,
Okay. I know.
she's very involved in, rights for immigrants and, activism and, anyway. So she spoke to me briefly about it and I think she's just, talking to them as a group and not any specific people.
Okay, and we don't have any complete submissions to, anything else on who's?
No submission.
No.
was it? I
So
will
no,
get there.
when was it actually posted?
Last week.
On the
Last
11th.
Thursday.
Oh, so that's not surprising at all. People need time to respond, so that's not anything. We have Landvest, updates on Landvest.
I spoke to Chris last week and he's still working.
Yeah, he did contact me while I was away and I did respond. He wanted some documentation.
I
that
connected with him last week and he was still working.
trees weren't, if the trees weren't viable. We had some from the tree fruit program at UMass. I think he got tired of coming out here and telling us the same thing.
John Clinton.
So I basically told him to just assume none of the trees are viable because that seems to be consistent with both all of our observations and what we've heard from folks, so. Anything else on Landvest? So, we are talking about for the agricultural land, about $2,000 or $3,000 an acre. I think it's not a lot, so. And that's with the restriction, obviously, to go more otherwise. Anything else on Landvest?
No.
Repairs to the outbuilding and the house remediation?
Yeah, so I wanted to sort of go back and sort of like really talk about that. So, back in September 4th of 2023, and I believe this was written by Cindy Napoli, she had submitted a summary as she had sort of like left her board of select position, where she lists a lot of things that need to get done. And I know there are things that we should do and shouldn't do, but she lists the HVAC system, electrical upgrades, new roof and gutter, and a partial roof repair is needed for the house. The structure for the main barn, structural siding of the barn required replacement, broken windows replacement and a repair. Sharon Edgar from Storm Longsider, who was our initial applicant in the past year, said that the cold storage underneath the barn was obsolete and unsanitary. And I know there's that fiber that we need to get tested. For the lower barn, they said it was there's a structural hole in the side of the barn, and the damage will require more permanent repair. Yeah, and then in the lower barn, I guess Storm Longsider felt there may be some structural integrity concerns. There's an abandoned shed on the property. I think that's like way in the back. That was recommended to be demolished.
Right.
And so and now, we need to, there's the asbestos issues, we need to consider lead, and then we need to remove the moldy walls, from the house after the flood in the wintertime, so.
So on the lead, Cheryl, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you need to have it tested unless you're selling it to somebody with children under a certain age.
It's not really a seller's obligation to do any testing. You just have to give notice that the buyer is encouraged or legally obligated to test if they're going to occupy with children. But you may have a difference here because it's municipal property, and the municipality and the select board may decide that they want to get a lead test or de-lead as a precaution against lawsuit later. Because damages could be large.
I think someone told me that they guarantee there's lead paint in that house.
Oh, I must guarantee you at
Yeah,
that age, yeah. On the other repairs, my suggestion would be, at least at this point, and keep in mind, none of the buildings right now are on APR land, including the house and the barn.
Yeah.
Once we get a better idea of what the interest is and where we want to go, we can talk about whether we want to try to include it somehow. But my suggestion is we focus on any repairs that are necessary to keep from any further degradation of the integrity of the buildings, but not necessarily beyond that. We may get somebody who wants to come into that building and, World Farmers comes in, wants to split it up between 3 farmers. It's a big enough house. You could turn it into a 3-unit building and it may be a different thing. But I do think anything where it's contributing to rot or further degradation of the building, we should make that a priority. That would be my suggestion.
So
So,
I've been in communication with Steve Yarnley, who has been responsive to things that we've found. And so in the last week I've gone, so there's further damage of some buildings. And so I'll share with you some of the photos from January 15th that note the lower barn, upper barn, the farm stand shed up top as well, the tree that's literally down in the front of the yard. That's been down for a couple of weeks. And then there in the backfield, there is a Sarah Doublet resident who is disposing of water from their basement onto one of the fields as well. I've taken a note there, so at some point we'll decide if we want to ask them not to do that. The holes are getting bigger in the lower barn. So I'll talk to Steve about that, see if they're patched, if there's some additional windows that are broken.
Is that the Sarah Doublet house, the one that the LCQ leases?
Yeah.
Okay,
No, Sarah Doublet Road,
okay, okay.
so as you're heading towards Acton.
And are these damages that are new since like we looked at it in the fall? The
They're
things that you-
progressing, yeah, so
Okay.
like the holes are getting bigger and animals are from the outside getting in.
Okay.
And then, of course, we still have the top shed, which every windstorm was worse. So I'm documenting that.
yeah, so, I think the concern is, we've talked about, like, I have minutes from May 11th of 2022. We've documented, concerns about the condition of the buildings. That was also, we also talked about it on, January 3rd. I feel like we talked about it on December 20th. But there's no forward motion to get these things done, and we need estimates to.
So it seems like we need a list, which Sarah's got a pretty good handle on. And then we need to hand it over to somebody who can basically get
Yeah,
estimates.
so on this, working group draft budget I've come up with, I want to start to list, all these things, but we also need to decide what we're not going to do and start really getting estimates and figure out if the town's going to do the work or if we're going to hire someone out.
Right, so one thing that we discussed, and we didn't discuss it at the last meeting, we put it on this agenda, is to see in regards to FinCom, if they want us to give them a budget line.
Right.
So if we have a budget line, and so that's what we'll talk about that tonight, and that might be.
I saw that in there.
Just comes out of
And again, some of the things I think we need to deal with immediately, and some of the things like the heating system.
Sure.
That I think we may have to put one in, but now's not the time. Let's see ultimately what the buyer or lessor wants and what we negotiate with them, but
Yeah.
certainly the structural damage. So you have a good list on that. Is there somebody in town who can give us an estimate of what that'll cost, who's got that
I could
expertise?
talk to Steve Yarnley first to go through the proper channels,
Okay,
to see, because he's been overseeing.
and then I think a joint meeting with the FinCom to run that by them, as well as any of the maintenance issues we have with invasive or mowing as well.
Yeah,
We didn't even put that on. Mowing's on, invasives is not on.
yeah, but the first step we need to do today is we need to someone would need to make a motion to create a line item in the town budget so that we can get,
I think
you
we
know,
have to
costs
ask for,
associated to
with the
that.
support of the commission, then we would ask FinCom if that's what they would like.
Now, do we have disposal we need to do as well? I remember in that lower barn, there was a lot of junk.
Well, we still have to dispose of a lot in the top barn
The
as
upper
well.
barn.
So should we
I
include that in the
volunteered
line
to do
item?
that And said we couldn't do it because we can't volunteer to do such.
No, but do we need a line, should we include that in the line item that we put forward?
We
Because
can
somebody's
we
gonna,
can put a disposal line on.
because at this point, I view that as kind of a fire hazard. Particularly in the lower barn where they've got all the cardboard and everything else.
That's in the upper barn as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and what I can do in the spreadsheet is, create a column for priorities and we can kind of maybe just create like a system like 1, 2, 3. More urgent, less urgent.
Fine, I can work on that.
Yeah,
And then are we going to achieve some sort of consensus on that, or is it just?
yeah, I think,
Or is,
No, I think we all have to go through it.
yeah, I think the first stage is like creating a list. And then maybe documenting what are their priorities and then coming back to kind of talk about that. But the first step tonight would really be to create a line item, make a motion to create just a line item and then set a time with FinCom, but we would need to really move pretty quickly because when is the final big meeting to approve the town budget where we're locked out?
so that's in May,
Yeah.
but the meetings are happening right now in terms of,
Yeah.
we know how much money we have to spend
Yeah,
as a town and we know what our needs are. And so right now is when we're trying to figure out how to true up the numbers.
so what is like the latest date we could get an appointment, like we should meet with FinCom? Like, I don't wanna
It's gonna
miss.
be up to them to,
Well, we need to have something to
If we
present to
can.
them first.
Yeah,
So I think it would be, probably the best course would be to come up tonight with a ballpark figure.
Right.
Are we talking $10,000, $100,000, or $1 million?
well,
And then, and bring that up, and Karen and I can discuss this at the next budget meeting we have, which is next Tuesday. And then come back and just to make sure that they understand it, it may be an ask, and then come back with a more detailed plan.
yeah, because with the spreadsheet that you come up with, you just on the very basic things, I have, basically just under $100,000.
100,000, okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
but
but that includes the extra $35,000, that's not a thing yet.
and it put in 10,000 for legal fees as well. So there's some items, but it makes no accommodation for renovations or disposals.
Right. So I would suggest somewhere between 125 and 150 as a
Okay.
ballpark figure.
Is that 100,000 at a prevailing wage rate for the labor?
So that's an important distinction. I think that one of the things we do when we prioritize is we're clear about which things we can do using, for example, DPW employees. You know, they can do things like replace windows, but they're not going to be doing structural work, which is going to be very expensive because it's a prevailing wage. About double what you would expect to pay for a regular commercial
Yeah.
contractor.
I mean, I think it's like several $100,000, like worst case.
Oh, I mean, I think you mean to repair the house completely or just to remediate some of the worst
Just
damage?
remediation, but, you know, worst case scenario with things, you know, because I also don't know how, and this may be projecting like too far forward and putting the cart before the horse, and you can tell me if I am, but, you know, I just want to be thoughtful about like how many of these costs are going to have to be incurred by the person who's going to take over or organization. Because I kind of feel like we should be really clear going into any negotiations what we'll be responsible for or not being responsible for, because I think it factors into whether they really want to do it or not, whether they ultimately want to take the time to submit an RFP. I'm really hesitant for the town to start using some of these repairs as negotiating tools. To save money, I think we should just be very honest and upfront about what the town is willing to do and what we are gonna pass off. Like the tree removal, like someone else is gonna have to remove all of those trees. That's what we've agreed to.
Well, I think we've got kind of two steps here. There's the things we need to do immediately to ensure the integrity of the building so they don't degrade further than they already have. And I think that's what we need to focus on here. I do think we need to be prepared for whoever comes in there to be able to negotiate who will take on some of the other costs. You may have somebody on there who doesn't want to pull out the trees and needs us to do it, but we like them. You may have others who'd rather get a lower price for a sale or a lease and do it themselves. So I think I agree we need to leave it open. We may have additional costs when we ultimately get a buyer or a lesser. But for now, I think we need to focus on what do we need to maintain the structural integrity and the curb appeal, and so it's not a nuisance to neighbors.
To Amy's point too, there's been a lot of comments from the public too about the fact that we've never had a line item for the orchard. So I think there's concern from the citizens that they want to make sure that we have enough funding to cover what may come up, because we really haven't put anything into this in 25 years. So I think that's the biggest concern, and I think 150 is way underestimated. To your point, Brad, I understand how there's gonna be a list of priorities, but still we need.
So I'm just talking the first step in priorities.
Yeah,
but
but then we have to wait another year for next.
No, I mean, we can do a reserve fund transfer. There's
Yeah.
emergency funds. I'm sure every year we get super creative with finding money in the seat cushions for this or that.
For that amount of money, saying.
Yeah, I mean,
100,000 or.
it's not unheard of, yeah.
I think we can let the FinCom know what the situation is, and depending who we end up for a lesser or a buyer, we may be looking for more money, but I wouldn't want to prejudge that.
And I do think that is part of the like if someone wants to buy it and the town needs to pony up $250,000 to do certain number of repairs in order to get this person onto the property that we feel is incredibly good and a good fit and will be there forever, that's something we can bring to the special town meeting, or, I think that's something that the town would have to vote on, and my guess is a lot of people would support it.
Yeah, I think so too.
As long as there's that flexibility, I was not
Yeah.
aware that there was that big a.
I think that this is a high profile enough, like politically, there will be flexibility.
Just as a point of order for the people that might be on Zoom and having come to this for the first time, when we're talking sale, we're talking the sale of the APR.
Correct.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I think just for people's.
Yeah, for those who are hearing, I know there's been concern. Two things. One, some of the land is not APR, which means it can't be sold. It's self-help with a conservation restriction. The APR land we're talking about selling or possibly selling can only be used for agriculture. It can't be sold for development. There are certainly opinions on what we should do with it, but nobody's prejudging whether we sell it or lease it. We're going to wait to see what we get for an RFI and ultimately an RFR before that decision is made. But in any case, the only land that can be sold would be the APR, which is essentially where the apple trees are now. And even that, it would have to stay in agriculture. It couldn't be sold for another use, for clarity's sake.
Thank you.
So are we, Mr. Chair, are we at 5A or 5B?
List of known expenses, I think we decided we still need to work on that. Potential expenses, I think we decided we could put some of those until later, until we know what we're doing. We still need an estimate. We agreed on that. I don't think we can make I think we can let the FinCom know we'd like to meet with them probably within about a month's time. Instead of a joint meeting or we come in, I don't care how it works.
Why don't we commit to having a firm number at our next, like deciding on a firm number at our next meeting?
Okay.
So with that, coming back to the house, we've talked for almost a year now about coming up with an estimate of what it's going to cost to mediate the house. We talked about clean harbors or such. Are we trying to put that in this budget, or are we just realizing that that's a larger fish to fry?
My opinion is that is so big especially at prevailing wage, that it's gonna be
So we're
untenable.
so we're gonna leave that.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think,
Out of this.
that's my
Okay.
opinion, yeah.
I just want clarity.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But it's worth noting that at some point, somebody is gonna have to deal with the house. It is not as bad as I had thought it would be when we went in there. I wouldn't want to be in there on a hot summer day, but it was cooler and I expected, a zombie movie hazardous waste site, and it wasn't quite that bad.
But can we, I mean,
It was relatively dry, that was the other thing. I was concerned that it was still very wet in there and it was continuing to mold, or that wasn't the case.
There was mold on the wall, so.
There was mold, but it wasn't still sopping wet and moldering, and so.
but can we commit to coming up with a firm list at the our next meeting? I think that would be a good timeline to get this in front of FinCom with a firm number.
So with that said, can we just look at Amy? So we had so the removal of the asbestos, and then where it says mold removal, we're gonna strike that off that budget line.
So,
And then we were going to have the downstairs, food storage area tested.
yeah, underneath where the,
Yeah.
barn was.
Yeah, there's some basically spray on insulation in the controlled
Right.
atmosphere room it's just one sample for asbestos.
That was 3 meetings ago that we talked about that, I don't recall what firm we were gonna try and use, or something from
I
the
thought
school, from the
Matt
school
was
committee.
gonna reach out to the school committee and ask who they use because they're required to test for asbestos once a year.
Oh, I thought, Brad, you had talked about,
So I know under federal law, schools are required to test for asbestos.
Okay.
So they likely have a contractor under, it's called a HERA. But who tested for the asbestos in the house?
I would assume it was,
Safe harbors, or clean harbors.
Yeah,
whatever.
So either one can do it. I don't have a contact with either, but
Do we just want to call Safe Harbor since we have?
Clean Harbors.
Clean Harbors.
I keep doing that too.
Yeah, because we have a relationship with them and just,
We did, because they were the ones who took out the pesticides.
yeah, just because they know the property, we have a relationship with them. They're a vendor in our system.
So are we talking about testing the cold storage or testing the house?
cold
Cold
storage.
storage.
Okay.
Just one sample is all you need.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, let's reach out to them, I guess.
At least if we could get a price of what that might be, we can add that to here.
Yeah, and then, sorry, I don't mean to like jump backwards, but, I know, Sherry Gould, who's an attorney, had given us some information about requirements for selling a house in lead. But if they're already coming and they're doing testing, like how expensive is a lead test? Like, just so that we all know there's probably lead there, but just to have documentation that there is. I mean, how.
So you're gonna get an estimate for both, so.
I mean, it can't, how much expensive can it be?
But the house is being held separate on the.
You're gonna find it. The question is, what do you do with it? So, I mean, we know it's there in a house that old. I almost guarantee you're gonna find lead in there. So if there's what I'd suggest is the town attorney recommends we do it.
Mhm.
Do we go with the town attorney if we have a higher degree of liability than a private seller? Then we can put that in. Sherry?
I'm just hearing both mixed messages. You asked me whether a seller needs to abate lead or test for lead, but I thought you said you're not selling the house, you're leasing the house.
We're not sure yet. It could go either way.
So if you're leasing the house, you have a liability to not lease to any child under, anyone who's going to occupy with a child under 6. And I would recommend the child, obviously, de-lead, because you never know if who you're leasing to, even if you can't discriminate. And if you lease to someone elderly, you don't know if they're going to babysit children.
So here's the deal. No, we're not gonna lease that to anybody before we do some much more significant renovations, which would be that next line item down the road. My suggestion is we put the lead into that, unless you want to get it over with, but that's not an immediate, if we end up leasing it, I agree, we probably need to test it. But, I mean, actually, that house is gonna be gutted, so lead may be moot at that point.
Take the thing out.
Asbestos may as well.
Well, you gotta remove the asbestos
Right.
before you gut it. You don't remove the lead before you gut
So
it.
let's focus on the cold storage first, and if there's a way to facilitate getting that tested, but in the meantime, at least get a quote for what the test is gonna cost us, so we can throw it in the line item.
And are you gonna add the items that you just circulated, these repairs to the barn into this list?
Yeah,
I'm gonna come up with what I think
Okay.
needs to just be done, like, quick patch.
When's our next meeting?
I'm not gonna talk about structural or anything,
Okay.
because that's prevailing wage, so just the things that we can do
Good.
internally as a town of the two structures, two barns and an outbuilding.
Okay, that one outbuilding, I have to question whether it's worth saving.
Which one?
The one you had a picture of, it's the one in
The farm stand there, they,
not, it's in the field, it's actually not in the farm
Oh,
stand.
no, the one, no, that's not the one on the field. This is the one up on the road.
Is there any benefit to
This
saving
is
the
the-
footprint?
Yeah, that one's up by,
that's
This one.
closer to
That's
the
right on the
road.
road.
Yeah, I mean,
Actually, we've talked about that for many meetings now. It's out of square, but I don't think it'll take a lot to bring it back in square.
okay.
let's add it, I mean, let's add it to the list.
Well, we'll get
So
somebody to
it's
look
on
at
the
it.
list.
Yeah, we get somebody to
Well, what
look
were you saying? Yeah, so if we're
Yes.
talking about demolition, we need to save the footprint.
So that to avoid somebody having to get a special permit through the APR.
Exactly.
Right,
to
right.
replace it.
That's a good point.
for which building?
Any
The
of
one
them.
that's all the way up in the middle of the field.
The one.
Yeah, that you would need to keep the same footprint if they demolish it.
Right.
You're almost better off leaving it even decrepitly than taking it down,
I agree. I wasn't gonna put that demolition on.
Yeah.
Because that's on APR loans.
because then you can get, whoever comes back and can say, we're gonna pull this down, we're gonna keep the same footprint. If you pull it down, they more likely to view it as a new building.
Make it into a pergola,
Yeah.
just keep it.
Just don't,
Skyline.
just don't tell them it's a wedding pergola, they have a
Yeah.
fit over those things, so.
So, that's it. Mr. Chair, if I may, I wanted to ask if we could add, or if we can consider adding an expense item for professional facilitation of the RFP process
Outside of legal.
outside of legal.
Yeah, I support that. Do you know rough ballpark what that would cost?
So I've been talking to our town administrator, Jim Duggan, and we've thrown around the idea of a private contractor. Obviously, that's an option. That would be more expensive. But he also threw out the idea that we might be able to work with MAPC and they might take it on.
With who?
That Metropolitan Area Planning.
Oh, MAPC. Yeah, they're good. They'd be good at that.
And so he's already started that conversation with them to see whether that would be an option for us.
So
Okay.
they would help facilitate the discussion about internally with the town or between the town and the potential.
They would,
Award.
they would facilitate getting this RFP written
Written.
and out the door.
Distributed.
Yeah.
It will have to go through town council, of course. But
So they'll do the bulk of the work.
they would be working on the drafting, on setting deadlines, on setting gate reviews with us and that kind of thing.
And they know these issues. I've worked with them on the food system plan
Right.
before, so. they're
Yeah,
not gonna
that's the
get hung up
idea.
on this stuff.
I think, given the experiences that some of the other members of this board have had with previous RFPs, I would strongly urge us to find a way to use
Yeah.
MAPC.
MAPC is good.
So, ballpark 15.
Yeah, that's about
There
right.
we might even be, if we used, sorry, you said it's MAPC. If
Mhm.
we use MAPC, then, there's, might even be grant opportunities available that will bring that number down, but in terms of if we had to go private.
So let's
15.
let's be conservative and go with the 15.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I mean, it's like, it is a lot of work. A lot of work.
So the town administrator is speaking with MAPC?
Mhm.
Good. Does mowing have to be on there? Or did we decide that was already covered under something?
Mowing, was like 8,000 in 2023, and I know there was, some equipment purchase and all this other stuff, but that was like over $30,000. I mean, those were, there was,
Let's keep it in. FinCom could always take it out.
Okay, they've got,
So-
that makes sense.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So the testing of the installation in the cold storage, the testing is not gonna be, that's gonna be cheap. You know, renovation, if it turns out to be asbestos, is gonna be expensive.
Yeah, I think
But
for now
that's an
we're just
immediate
looking for
hazard,
the test.
where it is.
Yeah, just
So-
the test fee.
So the test fee, that's like $35 to run the test, more money to get somebody out there, but it's a remediation. But the remediation, especially we're gonna have people on that should, if it truly is asbestos, that needs to happen on the sooner side. Because that's exposed and,
We'll keep it as a
Private.
line item, but we wouldn't know what the expense would be.
no, I mean, I haven't worked in that years, I wouldn't even guess.
So for
Um,
now, let's keep the
Let's,
test fee in, so that way.
So I put the test fee at $250.
Okay.
Could I suggest since we're in the process of building this out, Amy, that we, and with the idea that this will eventually go over to FinCom, that we specify which buildings we're talking about in that, you know, removal of lead in X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
And that'll help them visualize and
That's a
understand that, you know, when we come back and want to talk about lead removal somewhere else or asbestos removal somewhere
Yeah.
else, why, that it wasn't already covered.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I think in just emailing with, Steve and Eddie, his suggestion was to make a motion to create a line item for this committee. That would be just like step one. I don't know if anyone.
So moved,
Well, you have to make the motion.
make a line item for repairs and remediation for the orchard property.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Is this possibly, work that could be covered under CPC funds?
Seems like some of the building renovation might be.
If they were purchased with CPC funds, then the houses would be eligible, all the buildings would be eligible.
Well, I will,
preceded CPC.
But I mean, the church put in stained glass windows with those funding. It seems like we ought to be able to do something with some of our town buildings.
let me, I
So
can
upset
check
about
on that.
Okay,
So specifically, we want to ask if any of the renovations can be applied for with CPC.
Yeah, the church was done with historic funds from CPC. I don't know if you could do that for the orchard. I don't know how it would qualify for CPC.
It's pretty broad. So, I mean, I know people have put up deer fencing with it and that sort of thing. So there's, but we can check. That's easy enough to check.
Oh, I can,
Could that potentially come into play with the house?
well,
We got-
So-
if it was historic.
Right.
Do we know how old that house is?
yeah, when we toured it, the architect who came with us thought early to mid 19th century, I believe.
It's in a narrative somewhere.
Let me talk to Jonathan Leibowitz. He's on the historical commission and, yeah.
Yeah, because weren't we gonna try to see if we get a historical restriction?
Yeah, and I've since been told that DAR would take houses under APR, but I was waiting to actually meet with the commission. I'm gonna be in a meeting with her in early February, so I was waiting, so I don't get stuck with staff.
Yeah.
I'll look at that. I thought I saw it in a narrative somewhere, the age of the house.
But I was also gonna talk to Jonathan about seeing if we can get a historical restriction on it to tie it if we decide to go that way as well.
Oh, it's in that management plan.
It would be a shame to remove the house from the orchard.
I mean, I saw it recently.
It's in the I think it's in the original management plan that was done in 2000 that the conservation did. I'll try and find it, but I think it's in a narrative somewhere. So. I don't know, I have it with me now. But I can ask about CPC too.
Okay, so I think that wraps up 5. We have anything else before we get to public questions?
So,
We're gonna do the FAQs.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I started collecting questions and then just got creative and started sort of thinking questions that might come up from people. So I don't know if everyone has had, I know Brad's had a chance to look it over and Jen and Sarah, but I don't know, because I know we all sort of agreed we wanted to make sure the information was consistent and accurate.
And I agree, and I think that Amy, you've done a great job in terms of the emails, kind of sussing them out and not committing to any answer, like, give us your questions, we'll get back to you in a timely manner, we'll post them. So it's transparent, so everybody's sending the same message.
Yeah.
What we discussed, I don't know if we voted on, that Brad, was that like every 2 weeks after we've met, we'd go over the questions,
That makes
come
sense.
up with the answers, and then post them on the website.
Yeah, and just date them
Yeah.
and with a note that
So
says
it's
these will
kind
be
of like a
updated every
rolling-
2 weeks as we get more
Yeah.
questions, sort of thing. That
Yeah.
makes perfect sense.
So I can post them to the website as we create them. I'll just make a page
Okay.
and I'll just have it be a text page you can read instead of a document.
In the interim, we'll have a working document on the Google Drive that we can add to and edit as we see fit. Every 2 weeks, you can
Yeah.
upload wherever we stand on that.
So does everyone agree that these can be posted as is, or do we want to debate?
I gave Amy some comments today.
There's- So in regards to the chemicals, the last time it was used, I have to look up at the MDR report from the inspection of July 8th, 2020 by Chris Chisholm's. So I believe pesticide, or the chemicals would have been done in 2019. I don't know if they were done in 2020.
I think what my suggestion was say is approximately 2020. What, if anybody's particularly concerned about it, it's gonna be organic people worried about their transition period. Is that 3 or 5 years? Amy,
Yeah, it's 3.
3. So we say approximately 2020.
Okay.
I think we're probably good
But
there.
then you're still gonna reach out to see what the last year was that we.
Oh, but he stopped selling Charles long before.
And
Yeah.
it wouldn't cover what Charles might have in the barn that he's still using.
Right.
So
I,
the last year Charles was there, I think we've got to,
yeah, I just, I hesitate to commit that just because one particular salesperson didn't sell to Charles.
Oh, no, we're
Yeah.
just talking about in general, because when
so.
some of the calls and inquiries
Right.
Amy made and I made, there's the whole thing about organic. How
Yeah.
long do you have to go?
So basically you have to go 3 years without anything before you can declare it organic, but I don't think Charles has been, when was Charles last operating the orchard?
2020.
2020. So we'll say
That's what I'm
approximately,
saying. MDR did their report
so,
from a visit from July 8th, 2020.
so I know his son didn't spray because I spoke to him. So Charles would have been the last person to spray, so I think we can say approximately 2020 and leave it at
And
that.
that's what it
And
says.
that's what it's in
Yeah.
there, that's good.
Amy made those changes.
There were some, I think I saw a typo.
No,
that I didn't.
the tough part on this one is discussing the house and the barn because they technically aren't part of the APR.
Right.
They may or may not be in the future, depending on what we do.
And that's stated in the RFI that's, this can be part of a long-term lease.
But it might be wise to reiterate it in these
I
questions.
think so.
So
Numerous
but maybe
times.
we could add that as a question. Like just, are the house and the barn
So
included?
I given you some language about the lower barn and the cottage, maybe why not just note in the same section that the house and the main barn are also, well, not part, those I would anticipate to go with any lease. But
Right.
Yeah, it's just hard to describe because they're not a part of the APR, but I know we talked about, like, depending what's happening, we might try to pull the house and barn into the.
associated somehow, so it's tied to the APR.
Could we say that if respondents require the use for their, or something, just encourage respondents to discuss if they're interested in it, what they would do, but
Yeah.
But it's not, they're welcome to discuss what they would do with those structures.
Following-
if they're
following-
interested.
Assets are potentially available for lease as well.
They're welcome to include a use.
Include them in your proposal.
But not included. I had a question, about under the financial section. What are the specifics around the financial requirements for the investment?
Yeah, so that was a great question I received. That was a specific question I received. And so the question is, what are the specific around the financial requirements of investment? And the response I wrote is applicants are required to develop their own business plan for the budget for their farm enterprise, and applicants should review the RFI and tour the property to make a specific business plan.
So did we require a business plan in the RFI? I don't recall it.
No, just a vision.
No, but when they get to, so it should say
Visions.
RFP.
Yeah,
Probably
that's
They
where I was
are.
getting confused.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll change that to RFP. That's what I meant, because that will be a much deeper dive.
I mean, do we want to say something like that, the criteria is going to include, a detailed and like a detailed investigation of, capital sources and.
Yeah,
and
detailed
an
business
assurance-
plan
an
and
assurance that the respondent can,
reasonable assurance that they have access to capital.
something like that, because I think that's something that we all have expressed some concern about.
Yeah, and I don't know if
Because
it's,
visions are easy.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is the appropriate place to put it, or if it just gets put in the RFP, but how many like years of money do they have in the bank to assure us that they're not gonna go bankrupt in 2 years because they haven't like planned well? Because they're not gonna be really making any money for the first few years.
That's part of the business plan, isn't it?
Yeah, but,
Capital on hand.
yeah.
We might want to spell out that, financial resources are part of
Or,
it.
or we expect to see a path to viability, whether that's.
Yeah, financial viability. I don't
Yeah.
know, we have to get into how much money they have in the bank or, but
But a viable plan, whether that includes, assistance from municipalities or nonprofits or whatever,
grants, rich
Or-
relatives,
or a commercial enterprise, either one is fine.
investors.
Yeah.
It could be a mix of things.
So what we said in the RFI, that respondents will be expected at the solicitation level to provide business plans, financial capability statements, and details regarding qualification and experience.
It's pretty general.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we could get more specific in here if we wanted to.
Yeah. Another question. Go ahead.
Well, so do we want to, I guess I'm suggesting that we separate the lists of questions, frequently asked questions versus questions that have been submitted.
I think she's being kind of proactive instead of reactive. These are some questions that we as a group think are going to be asked.
Right, for most of these, but then this question you said was verbatim from
Yeah.
somebody who sent one.
Right.
Yeah, and then this, the soil, well, it was really a, question about organic, that was.
Well, the soil one, I think we can anticipate we're gonna get that from others, but I agree, if we get one question, we start getting the same question over and over, it'll go in the FAQ.
It
We
can
get
go in
it
the
once, let's
FAQ.
just deal with that.
But I guess typically, as you know, when folks are responding to these types of things, they want to know, they want to see their question answered.
Okay,
And so I think
so just divide it up like
it
that.
would be helpful, even if we also put in FAQs to make sure that we have a copy of the verbatim question
You
from
can
the,
say
from
recent
the person
questions.
and put it in there.
And
Okay,
the recent questions can be dated in reverse order, so we'll add the new ones at the top.
Submitted questions maybe versus
Yeah,
FAQ.
yeah, there you go.
okay, so one of the questions, that came in, today is the residential structure adjacent to the barn in lot 105 livable with all functional utilities? I said,
No.
no. Yeah, yeah,
Just a one-word answer.
Livable by what species?
Yeah.
yeah,
Cockroaches about it.
yeah. And then the other specific question that came in is, what is the timeline for other residential land properties available for purchase or lease that is not included in this RFI? So they're like, yeah, what is the timeline?
What do they ask
So the-
on that one? I didn't
So
understand.
I take it that with the lease, the only thing that would be quicker would be the cottage, but there's no running water, but you can bring water in. So that's a viable living if somebody wants to be resourceful. But then the next would be the house, which is not in a timeline right now.
So what is the question again?
So I think she just went back to the question that asks, is the residential structure adjacent to the barn in lot 105 livable with all functional utilities? The answer is no. And then you jump to the lower cottage,
Mhm.
which does not have electricity, but no running water.
Correct. But
But can you read the timeline question again? Because I didn't understand what that was.
Yeah, that's what lost me.
Yeah, do you have the FAQ?
Oh,
So
sorry.
on
Is it in
page,
here?
on
Yeah.
page 2, under
Oh,
the section of land and property, it's the 1, 2, 3, 4.
What is the timeline
Oh, I
for
got
other
it.
residential land properties available for purchase or lease that is not included in this RFI? So there is no other property that's available for purchase.
Okay,
So that's the first thing. All the others are CRs, self-help that we can't sell. other
The-
lots
the
of
co-
land and buildings may be available for lease on a case-by-case basis, and we're gonna have to discuss it at the time.
The cottage is on conservation land?
Yeah.
And the
the
lower
lower
barn
barn.
too? Okay.
And the other two we own outright. It's not on APR at this point. But at this point, nothing else is for sale.
So they can lease the cottage in the
They can
lower.
potentially lease it,
Potentially,
right?
lease.
Potentially.
I wouldn't want someone just to carve off that section as a lease. Like,
Right.
that's like a benefit of the grander.
Piece. And if someone asks to lease those two buildings, does that have to go through Conservation Commission first?
No, it would go through this process first.
Okay.
But what I would say, I think we want to give first dibs to whoever takes over the APR.
Right.
So I'd say that's a case-by-case discussion that'll take place during the
And if there's
RFP.
someone like one
So
leaseholder.
RFP or RFR, I can't, they keep changing them on me.
Right now, we're working on the RFI.
R.
Aye.
I know we're working, that one I got, but I've heard
Okay.
RFP and RFR used interchangeably. What are we using?
I keep saying RFP because that's the federal nomenclature, but I think it's RFI in Massachusetts.
Okay, that's what was confusing me too. Okay.
So do we want to maintain that language then? Because in the past, we've used P for consistency going for the next one. Which do you prefer?
I mean, honestly, they're the exact same thing. It's
No,
Yeah.
proposal or response.
Let's just
Let's
choose
just
one.
stick with P for now.
Okay.
If we've used P, stick with P.
Okay.
But I think you're right. I think state goes by R, but who cares?
Yeah,
It's minutia.
that's for the.
Okay.
And then another question that actually I had, so I know we agreed that the town would not do any soil testing because the property is so big where you're gonna test the top of the hill, the bottom of the hill, and depending on what type of agriculture someone does, they might be looking for different things in a soil test. So if someone wants to do a soil test, how can we give them access? Because no one is gonna agree, like if we offered them the opportunity, they're gonna wanna do a soil test. They might even wanna do a soil test before they go through all the hard work and time of filling out the RFP. So how do we go about giving them access to the property to do their own soil test? And do we reimburse them if they are awarded the R?
I'd say we just they make an appointment and we meet them and they take samples.
So up at the top of page 2, my question about the soil test. The soils map is gonna give you the kind and type of soil that is the makeup, whether it's a gravel, a clay,
Yeah.
ledge, whatever. So when somebody goes to plant a crop, they're going to have to supply that crop with whatever nutrients that crop is going to take out of the ground that year for that crop, regardless of what's already there, because then they would be mining out the soil. So with the soil types, they should have a pretty good baseline of what they're going to need to grow, whether it's hay, corn, stone fruit, palm fruit, berries, whatever they grow. The variable, I think, would be possibly the pH in the soil and what it would take to.
Then they'll let arsenate.
But is that just like a tweak to what you would put in? Because you know the bulk of what you're gonna have to put in for
Yeah, but I think,
nutrients and
So I
stuff.
think people with some of the tillable land as well, they may want to do testing.
yeah, I think we offer them the opportunity to come in and at their cost to do whatever testing they see fit, and we'll make an appointment and make sure there's somebody there to support them.
Yeah.
Right? There's no
And then
liability
we
or
can just go
anything.
back to,
We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it.
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
we can't have barriers anymore, so. But then we can go to the old field map and they can determine where do they want to
Right.
do their soil testing. I'm happy to help with
Like,
that.
are we talking like a little, for sample, like a tiny little bit? or-
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
But with frozen ground, you have to use more of a power auger in order to get that.
We're not gonna kill any trees.
they can kill them as long as they take them over when they're gone.
All right, so. Okay, so we've talked about the process for answering the questions. Okay, so in terms, sorry, I just became the chair, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. It's informal. If you get something to say, say it.
So I think it would be a good idea if we can do tonight is to set a date for any applicants who want to walk the property. So, because we said that anyone who submitted an RFI would then be invited to do a tour. Since the application date is March 1st, could we pick one day or like 2 days in March to do the tour?
Do they need a tour beforehand?
I would think people are gonna potentially
Wait.
wanna do a tour
Before.
before they
Yeah.
go full on, really spending time with I.
End of January.
But I think they need to be diligent, they still need to be, somewhat vetted a little bit to make sure that their intentions are solid.
So why don't we give them 2 Saturday or 1 Saturday in February where we can meet them at 10 a.m. and do a walkthrough?
Who needs to be there in the walkthrough? Just 1 or 2 of us?
Yes, I
Town,
think that,
town, Steve would have to be there with the keys.
Okay, so What-
Between all of us, one of us should be able to make it.
so I guess so it would be a Saturday?
Would you not wanna wait until you see what interest or who asked for that first, and then you can kind of consolidate them together?
Well, what I suggest is we pick a date that works for us. We let them know. If nobody wants to show up, we don't have to do it.
I do think like having them proactively reach out for it is a great like first hurdle. Like if they're interested, they're gonna come to us and say, I want to see the land. I think that's a really good way to determine interest.
I feel more comfortable with someone coming forth first.
Oh, no, I'd make them
Initiative.
RSVP. I'm just saying, pick a date. Yes, sir.
Yeah, if it's okay, Mr. Chair. So yeah, so I'm here with interest in the land, and my plan was tonight to try to leave with more information and a date to tour the land. And then I think I would not want to wait till February so that I can keep whatever momentum I have going. Just as a point of fact.
Well, you get 2 weeks left in January and it's not gonna be in the next week. It's too cold.
And it just is sort of like ask, because, you're a potential applicant, what would be the difference of giving you a more formal tour versus you just like driving by the property?
Yeah, and so my tour would be for sure different than most people's, because I want to walk every inch of the entire property. Just what I do with big pieces of land. And so I don't know if you want to try to coordinate a tour with multiple groups.
Yeah.
Like he'll be walking with me.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I also think, and I totally respect your desire to look at every single inch of it, but are we gonna set a time frame? Because because we want to be equitable and transparent,
Right.
Like, are we gonna say, okay, it's a 2-hour tour? And then if someone submits an RFP, they get a little bit more time, like, I just don't want, like, if you want to be there for 5 hours, we can't, like,
So for the exterior, let me ask for the liability, is there anything that prevents him from walking the fields himself?
No.
No.
And I.
So it seems to
I'm
me
happy
if
to
we
do
had-
Fields, but when we do buildings.
Yeah, buildings, we
it
obviously need to
needs
be there.
In the middle of the week, because
But
we
if we
need to have
could-
a town employee there.
Yeah.
Okay.
To open the
Yeah.
building, so I don't think Saturdays, I think it's gonna be, an afternoon,
Okay,
midweek.
the issue is we do have some people who work and who may be interested, and aren't gonna be able to make it midweek. So what's your preference, Saturday or weekday, or do you
I'll do
want?
any day that.
Yeah.
Bar, yeah, so I'm.
And
I'm flexible.
are you interested in looking inside the structures as well?
Yeah.
It would be easier for Steve to do, definitely be easier for Steve to do a weekday.
So why don't we do this? Let's pick a weekday. As soon as we can, we'll set it up and say, and leave it open. If somebody can't make it, that they reach out and we try to make other arrangements if we can.
And in the meantime, they still have to submit a form of interest to the commission to state who they are. So people don't just show up, that there has to be an intent.
yeah, I don't think you can,
I don't understand, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I don't understand can you tell me more about that? Because we just conducted a tour for anybody who showed up in the library.
that was for the community though.
So you're gonna have looky-loos
I
like you
mean,
do with an open house at
We
a
didn't vet
house.
those folks.
But there's also people who are gonna say, I don't even know what to write until I see how big this barn is, what the shape is, what the house is, what the opportunity is. So there's some people aren't even gonna put in RFI or go through the work until they know what they're dealing with, I think. Yes, sir.
I'm one of those people.
Yeah, we know.
I will not be submitting an RFI, and just for your information, typically it can be a negative for anyone who actually has an idea to work on a project. Because when you tell everybody what you're thinking about and who you are, now, everyone else, one can decide they want to, you know, they don't like you and creates negative, issues. Two, competition and decide, oh, you can do that, I can do that. So our guys
Yeah.
have some problems with them, and so I'm happy to do a, you know, RFP, proposal, but I won't be submitting an RFI.
Karen, I get where you're coming from, but I think a lot of people, because it wasn't public, there was no RFI.
Mhm.
There are a lot of people that all of a sudden are like, oh, I didn't know this was actually coming up to be available.
Mhm.
So I think what we did for the town, I think we'll probably have to do very similar actions again. Because I think now there's people with advertising, word of mouth, it's out there.
Yeah, we hadn't even advertised the RFI to the people who were potential.
So
We could do the same.
my suggestion is we open up a date for anybody to show up who's interested in the RFI. They have to RSVP, but not give us any gory details of what their plans might be.
And then if somebody wants to just walk the land first,
Well,
we can do it, we can. do
my
it.
suggestion is we meet, we give an overview of what we're gonna do, and we don't get any information on what people are planning. We let them tour the buildings, we go over the maps. If you or somebody wants to walk the fields with them, knock yourself out. Otherwise, I'm gonna go home or swarm and let them walk the land themselves, so.
We're gonna do, we should do two tours. We should do one before March 1st, but then we need to do one after March 1st, because there may be people that we aren't aware of that we can't reach out to invite them.
Right,
Well-
we do need to do that because I was reviewing the RFI and we actually asked people to tell us whether they were interested in a tour of the premises, so.
Yeah.
You're not gonna know that until after March 1st.
Right, so we'll have to do something after March 1st, no matter what, but I think it's great to do something earlier.
I think we have to. I think it's a necessity.
I think we need to make sure that everybody understands that this land is not open to the public.
Yeah. Please take notice, right, Sarah?
I'm just looking at the calendar.
We want to do this in January?
We think we can give people. more
Early
time.
February, maybe?
I mean, we don't
have much time.
have much in January, so.
I think we
What
need
about
to,
next week?
no, I think people need
You wanna
more
wait?
notice.
So that's the problem. I mean, we're obviously not gonna do this Saturday, even the 27th is.
But we're not gonna do a Saturday, remember?
Weekday.
Oh, okay. Well, we could do the 26th, which is a week from Friday.
I think we should do it on like February 6th or 7th. Like, I think people just need more notice. They might have meetings planned or.
Is it, are you okay with
Okay.
that? My only concern is that they don't have time to put together the RFI.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do it. I want to.
Yeah, it would be nice to have a weekend visit to look at the property.
Hey, Mohammed, can you identify yourself?
Yes, my name is Mohammed Hanan. I am the owner of Hanan Healthy Foods in Lincoln. I run a 10 acre certified organic operation. And I was asking if you will be able to offer a weekend visit as well alongside a weekday.
One weekend.
I'm sorry, Mohammed, you say you prefer a weekend or a weekday?
I prefer a weekend. Weekend.
Let's do
Let's do two.
one midweek and one weekend.
Yeah, and can we get the keys from Steve or something?
I'll talk to Steve and find out how we can work that out, because I don't.
And
want
we need
ask
to
him.
do both before the first. And then do a third one after the first.
Of March.
Right.
I think
Okay.
I have.
So do
Okay.
3 tours, 2
Yeah.
before the deadline
Right.
and 1 after the
Yes.
deadline.
And I think all we really have to plan now are the 2 before the deadline, because we'll have a better idea of who's interested after.
Yes.
Mhm. Okay, and I
Thank you.
can reach back to anyone who's emailed in to let them know once you have the dates. Matt, from the town.
Okay, well, I'm gonna start with the 6th and the 7th. Steve was very flexible last time. He was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then also, let's say the 6th and the 7th, and then we'll talk about maybe the Saturday after that.
So on the buildings, are we giving a tour of all 4 buildings?
I think so. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
we would want to have people see everything, right?
Should we, so if you're potentially thinking the 10th,
Yeah,
Should we do like a storm date of the 11th?
yep. I think we should.
Because you know.
So what are the dates again?
The 6th to the 7th of February, which is a Tuesday and Wednesday.
And so I can't do either of those two.
I can't either. Tuesdays
Okay.
and Wednesdays.
6th or 7th of February?
What about like the 8th
I
or the
can
9th?
do
Well,
8, I can do
We don't all need to be
eight,
there.
9, 10.
Yeah, that'll be okay, 8, 9, 10.
9, 10.
We don't all need to be there, but the more the people who are available, the better.
We get a quorum issue though.
Right, but I mean, we can edit out who's gonna be there.
Anyway, I can be 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10.
Okay,
So,
For the storm date of the 11th?
yep. I'll ask Steve.
Okay, so are we gonna definitively pick the 2 dates?
The 8th or the 9th, and then the 10th or the 11th, the 10th with the storm date of the 11th. But again, I will ask Steve about that. And if he responds and he can't do those dates, I'll email all of you and,
Okay, so Saturday would be the 10th
yep,
for people. And then we would either do 8 or 9,
right,
and then the storm date would be the 11th.
yes.
so the earlier date in both sets would be the preferable one, the storm date being the following day. And hopefully we'll have any 2
So we'll
days.
leave that up to Steve too, though, so I know they're working Fridays, but I don't know if they're always gonna work Fridays, so to see if he prefers.
So it would probably be the morning then, if he usually prefers like doing it in the morning.
Does he prefer 9 or 10?
Well, I think he's at work at like 7.
Yeah, he's early.
So I think we could do it at 8 or 9, as early as we can.
I would give him at least 9. We may have some folks traveling.
Okay,
Yeah, so 9 to 11, 2-hour window.
something like that, yeah. But we want people to show up at 9. We don't want them to show up at 10:30.
No,
Right.
have like a start. date.
Like you
Yeah.
need to be
Yeah.
with us to see the buildings, and if you show up late, you don't get to see some of the things.
Usually
Okay.
it's
So, if we can just recap.
Yeah,
So approximately 9 to 11, we'd meet at the top barn, because there's parking there. So the first tour would be on the 8th.
And we should ask people to RSVP because I don't want to be there if nobody's going to show up.
And then the second tour, we're gonna go for the 8th as the first choice, if that works for Steve. And then the Saturday tour would be the 10th.
Storm date.
And then if either of those get stormed out, the storm date would be the 11th on Sunday.
Yeah, and we can actually, once we get confirmation from Steve, we can update our our digital publications with Edible Boston. I can go back to some of, the online forms I've done, like New England Farm Finder, and update that. I can email out, because it's free, back out to EMAS Craft, and just update people.
So the 8th and the 10th with the storm date of the 11th. Provided that's good for Steve for the 8th, and
Yeah.
then we'll just have to
Or he can
figure out.
provide keys.
yeah, I'm gonna ask him.
Are we gonna go in the house?
I think people will want to see the inside.
Well, we should have masks.
I wouldn't go in there in the summer. I'm much more comfortable now.
Maybe we should just bring masks anyway. Just
They can
a
bring,
box of-
those masks don't filter out anything, just so you know. Those paper masks don't.
So
The
what
particles are
about
too
their
small.
N95 masks?
Do we need council to sign some, or to create
Let
some sort
people
of
bring
waiver?
their own masks so that you're not liable.
Yeah, Karen, yeah. I think so. In the house.
But none of those paper face masks filter out. Those particular size.
So then we need to tell people to bring an N95 mask with them.
I'm guessing that that will not be the recommendation.
But then they can't go that, we can't
So,
let them go in.
The question is, I'm not sure N95 masks filter out asbestos. If we tell them they do, then we set ourselves up for some liability, I would suspect.
Well, let's get back to, I think we'll talk to council on that. Let's table that.
Council's gonna say, don't let them in. So here's my suggestion. Can we at least get some pictures put together?
Why don't we just get a virtual tour like it's a house tour?
That's what I'm saying. Let's get some
Just walk
pictures
in
of the
and just
house.
Sit around.
You not comfortable with that?
No.
So here's the problem. We had a lot of water damage in the house.
Sure.
There's a lot of mold damage.
Which is not.
The municipality we're concerned about.
Sure.
I will tell you straight out, it's a complete gut job.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, that's what you need to do.
Knockdown, not just a gut job, but I don't know whether it can be knocked down or not, but yeah, but typically, I've done this before in other locations, so it's enter at your own risk, sign some waiver. That's usually what town council would have you do.
We can push back against town council.
If we can get town council to do a
We can
waiver on full of that,
assist,
people can wear a mask if they want, but we
Yeah.
shouldn't be recommending them when we don't have the expertise to say whether they're
Yeah,
gonna
at
be
your own risk.
That's my point.
filtering out what we're worried about.
Matt, I am going to wait to email town council until I talk to you about that
Okay.
first. I just want to coordinate so
I
that
think
nobody
The
says,
messaging would be, yeah,
you know, what?
yep.
Okay. You've got the background on the agenda, so I'm gonna let you run it.
Yeah, so I think we've covered all of our agenda items, unless there's anything else anyone wants to bring up. Mr. Pickard?
Any questions from the public? Mohammed, do you already have an APR form? Have I spoken to you before?
You have, Jimmy, you've got. a hand
Yes.
raised.
I am currently working with the town on the town conservation land. It's a 10-acre property, pretty close to Codman Community Farm, and I have two different fields. One is next to the railroad crossing on Route 117, and the other one is next to the Hanscom Drive. That is basically adjacent to the state forest too. Minuteman National Park. So
Yeah, I've
both
passed-
conservation land.
Yeah, I passed your farm on 117 over by Drummond Farm by the railroad tracks. You came out of the New Entry Sustainable Farming Program, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I think I saw a workshop that you and Jen Hashley did. I think you were one of the speakers.
Yes.
That's how I remember you.
Yeah, that land was fallow for, before I started, it was fallow for a few years. So I basically started from the scratch. There was nothing
Cool.
except,
All right, we're gonna
yeah.
move to Janine Wood. I'm gonna ask to unmute
And introduce yourself.
and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Janine Wood. I live on Christina Street. I am working with the Uganda Boston Community Association, who has members that are interested in potentially putting forward a bid for this. This is still in progress. So I quick question. Was listening to everyone put together the tour dates. Are those confirmed, and could you repeat them for me, please?
They're not confirmed yet. I need to confirm them with the holder of the keys.
And we
Okay,
can post them on the website. I think it's
Awesome.
probably the best place to look for them, Janine.
That's perfect. That's what I was doing. I'm just trying, I'm kind of in go between, so I'm trying to gather up the information and make sure I get it to my friends accurately and well. Thank you so much.
And I would recommend that they attend the tour, that they're directly involved.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, yes. That's yes. That's why I'm asking.
Great, thank you.
All right, is there any other members on Zoom that have a question? Sir in the audience? You all?
Yeah, is there a way I can get maybe a more defined plan that I can utilize when I'm walking on the property? I got what you have on the website, but it's not as clear to me. I'm hoping something I can print out, and I usually carry a big plan, so I can.
Yeah, we could upload that map and anyone could just print that off the USDA map.
Or
Have
could
you seen the USDA map?
Well, I have what's in the RFI.
Right. But
No,
could you go to the?
This is a different one.
Okay,
But we have to offer everybody the same
Yep.
material, so we
I
have
think
to
this would be a
upload it.
great one to put on, because it talks about the field numbers. If
Yeah,
you want to put it
that's
on the
fine.
website.
Matt, or can you upload the USDA
Yeah,
map?
yeah, if someone just, gets it to me, or if
Let me
it's,
get-
is it on the,
I'll give you this one. We can.
Is it on the Google Drive?
It should be.
Should be.
Yeah, then I can upload it.
And will it show the restrictions, whatever the proposed restrictions are on each property?
Those are the bigger maps. Yeah, are those on the website?
No, but those are in the RFI.
Those are described in the RFI.
Yeah, those are actually those. No,
I mean, I have that one,
Small, but you can,
it's small, right?
yeah, you can blow them up though, but every map has all the lot numbers on it and it says right on it, APR self-help.
And you could go on, you could go onto the GIS site on the town.
So in short, the APR ones are the ones in question. The self-help ones are the ones for sale or lease. The self-helps are the ones that are potentially leasable, but not saleable.
Will you potentially bring a big plan to the tours that we can then talk about at the tour? So I can clarify.
so there's really 3 good maps that are defined, and so there's not one big one. So if you're at the top barn and you look to your left, you've got a map that takes there, then it transects by the road, and then you go on to the next parcel, which has another map. So those maps are best to have individually, because you've got your roads, that kind of.
The one
Part of them all.
confusing thing is because the town owns the APR, the house and the barn, the upper house and the barn are shown as being part of the same part of the parcels as the APR, but they are not. So the assessor's map is incorrect on that.
Yeah, don't you
My
think?
point being, at the tour, I'll be asking those questions about, okay, this land has this restriction, this land has this restriction. So it will be helpful if you guys have a presentation map.
We do, it should be in the RFI.
It just agreed, it's not like the best quality, right? It's really small.
We have a lot of conflicting maps, many of which are poor quality, but we should be able to answer your questions at the walkthrough. And if we can't, we'll get back to you
Okay.
and everybody
Yeah,
else.
I'll just try to print this out on, 24 by 36 and
Okay.
see how it comes out.
And I'd say if you have questions ahead of time, the FAQ, let's, just send it ahead of time so we can be prepared as well.
Okay.
Because to be quite frank, these maps have been confusing even for us.
Well, I think we've done a good job in the last couple of weeks too, and
Yeah.
in the RFI, Karen's uploaded, we spent a lot of time to make sure the right ones were uploaded.
Do we want to add that to the FAQs? Can I see in that?
Yeah,
And then
maybe-
make a link to where.
Yeah.
To the
Matt.
USDA map.
Yeah,
and the town
if you
GIS
wanna-
maps.
yeah, and then Matt, if you want to add it separately on the webpage somewhere, that's fine, but also you can put it in FAQs so folks can find
I
it.
can do that.
And we don't want to refer people to the assessor's maps because
No.
they're not right.
No, they're not right.
So I put together, an acreage breakdown because I was getting confused.
That thing was amazing.
And
Thank you.
We talked about it at the last meeting, so if we want to.
so I'm happy
upload that,
to share this as well. But
That's something we should share at
You
the,
haven't seen.
no, I don't.
Okay.
I think I saw an attachment.
Would you like, and should I put this on the website as well?
Yeah.
Those are Jen and I worked up the numbers that, like when we did the tour, the actual walking tour, those are the numbers that we referenced when we were walking.
And we took those maps and took the exact acreage off of it. That's how we got those weird numbers, because it's directly off that.
Did you find the 4.18?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
unrestricted.
They're these tiny little pieces and they all add up to.
Fascinating.
Is it in Google Drive?
No,
Okay.
But if you could put it there, that'd be great. So I can post it to the site, to the page on the web page.
Yeah, I mean, Sarah, the maps you have
Those are the ones in the RFI.
there.
Yeah.
that's all we did was
That's all we
take
did at the
the
last.
RFI and make it bigger, those maps, and then literally with the calculator, sit there and come up with that.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Sorry, my question was the ones that you have there, the paper ones. When we do the tours, can we have a copy of those? Like, can the town make
Yeah,
copies of
That's
those?
fine. Because these are the maps that we had posted over when you did the presentation in the library.
Yeah. Okay, is there anything else?
Any other questions from the audience? Done.
No, fine.
John.
Okay, with that said, anything else folks want to discuss?
We make a
If
motion.
not, I'll
Actually,
entertain.
one last thing, I just want to recognize Amy for all her work.
Yeah,
That
you-
she's done a tremendous amount of
Here,
work.
here.
And Karen as well on the RFI. I
Yeah.
agree.
It's a lot of work.
Big group effort.
Okay, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn at 8:30 on January 17th, 2024.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
The rest of you can stay here.